In this module, we'll be looking at working with layers in Photoshop and masking operations that to be able to create a unique image from other images. So today we're going to talk about layers, and the layering is interesting. It's like having sheets of paper and let's stack on top. So you'll have an image that looks like this, let's say, and it's made up of actually separate little images. And actually, this little cloud here is actually this big one shrunk down. So I mean, you can repeat things and so forth. It's interesting how it works. Um, a good example that I did this for a friend where that quilt shop I talked about. So you can see I use this technique myself. I had a picture of her. She thought it was crazy taking a picture of her. She says, "What are you doing?" Well, I think, and then I said, "I want to see Hank." That's her dog. Her dog's always with her in the shop. So we couldn't get Hank to sit still. He's a nervous little dog. So she kind of held him like that, took a picture, and then I put them together, and then I put them in the model. And it's like, oh my gosh, here I am in the model. It's great, fantastic. Here's what a student did this for real life, for an office, right? So here's the picture of, excuse me, here's a rendering of the project. And they brought it into a photograph. The background is this photo of the place. See that little house here? The kid went out, took a picture of the site, and then used that as the backdrop. There's the site here again. And so here is the model. Back here's the picture of the site. Here's the building. And so, I mean, you can say, look, when he did the rendering, he had the rendering come in without a backdrop. So all this backdrop, he then could bring in Photoshop and put it himself. An example here, there's a PDF called Compositing PDF. And they basically took this picture, this one, the words, and put it together into one image. And they use this as a kind of a guide of how to lay things out. So they knew how to put the fingers and stuff that and how it looks and things like that. So a couple of other ones. One's important is selecting, making sure you select what you want and so forth. When you do these layerings and they stack on top of each other, you want to select properly. And then the other thing is just using some of the techniques. And this is a site called visualizingarchitecture.com by Alex Hogreth. Good, great place to look at. I would definitely steer you in that direction. There's so much there. He's got information on modeling, on using Photoshop, and rendering techniques, so forth. So he's got a lot of good stuff. And his images, look at that. That's an incredible image. So we're going to use layerings in this class to do this boat. Let's say we want this boater onto this backdrop here. And what we'll do is we'll use Photoshop to get that boater in there. We're doing that as an example. This could be all sorts of things. So let's go ahead and open the boater file in Photoshop. File open. And the boater is inside that you downloaded. Hopefully you had a chance to download all that stuff and even looked over the lecture a little bit so you know what we're getting involved in, the Dells project. This is from Wisconsin Dells, if you've ever been there. And we're going to select the boater and we're going to copy and paste it and put it into our backdrop area. So we're going to use magnetic lasso. So up here is magnetic lasso. If you hold down, if you right click on this image, you'll have the different ones. We've used polygonal for straight areas, and the lasso tool, you can click and drag around. Magnetic, what it does is it looks at the different coloring between the two pixels and basically picks an edge. Where's the edge happening on this pixels? We want to have a setting set to add to selection. So we want to select and add, so forth. If we go too far out of our selection by mistake, we'll go back and take off. But right now we're going to add to selection. And the feathering, I want it to be about 4 pixels. What that means is that from the edge of where we select outwards, it's going to blend out, kind of fuzz out about 4 pixels out. And that's what we see in real life, right? When we get close to, the pixels, right? They blend out, right? They start dark and then they blend out, and then they start blend out and fade out to the backdrop, right? So that's what happens in real life. So we're going to do this. We're going to select a selection, and then we're going to do a 4 pixel feather. And so what we want to do then is go around with the magnetic lasso and let the computer find the where to pick, okay? So I'm gonna zoom up here. And I'm going to magnetic lasso. So the way I zoomed was I just did the Alt key and oops, someone's coming in. I did the Alt key and I kind of do the scroll wheel. By the way, if you use the space bar is a pan, and the Alt key and the wheel is that. And then as you work around it, you might want to pan over. Let me show you something. Okay, so you're doing like this, and then if you want to pan over. Oh no, wait a second. And now you got all this stuff going on. And then what's going to happen here? If you press escape, it goes all the way. So what do? So you click it, and you kind of go, okay, now I need to go across. If you hold down the space bar while you do that, you see I'm not drawing the lines now. Let go of the space bar and I'm back to where I was. Okay? Or if you hit down the Alt and the space bar, oops, excuse me. See what happened? I hate that when it happens. Hit the space bar and then the Alt, you can zoom in. Okay? And of course, if you press escape, if you select and close the shape and start again, oh, I don't want to do that, you can escape. The closed shape stays. Right? So you can hit once the shape closes, right? You're fine. And what we did a little bit in this morning class is we did parts of the model at a time. And so like here, I'll do this. And so see by using the add, I've been able to add, and so forth. So I'm using the subtract now. All right, so let's zoom up here a second. So it doesn't have to be super perfect because we can modify a little bit. So I just click my starting point and I'm just moving myself around and I'm just letting the computer pick out. So I'm not dragging my mouse. I'm just moving my mouse around the shape. Also, do not get freaked out if you're not 100% exact. I want you just to get the understanding of what we're doing. All right. So let me go back a second. I want you to realize it takes time to get something to look good. For this class, I just want you to get the feel of how this works and what you have to consider as you work through selecting an item using magnetic select. Every now and then I might click, especially like when I start changing to a different material, like I've gone from my skin to the water to the vest and the water. So I want to make sure the computer understands that, hey, this is where I want the change to occur. Otherwise, I might decide to stick on the skin or move around, okay? You want to be somewhat close, but if you're not 100% close, okay, I have to hold the space bar and I'm going to pan up and over. Let go of the space bar. Hold the space bar for me. Let go of the space bar. And if I wanted to zoom, I'd hold the space bar first, then click the zoom button, the Alt key, excuse me, and then use the scroll wheel. But space bar first. Space bar kind of holds off things a little bit. You know, holds the tool from clicking around where you don't want to click around. We're not going to pick the water. We're just going to click around the boat. Again, we're saying we're putting the boater into the lake, right? We're saying we're going to put the boater into that other lake. That's the better picture we want. I'm going to have to go back and clean up that water back there. So space bar first, Alt, zoom in, pan, let go of the space bar. . Again, you could also do this in pieces, right? You can also do this in pieces. You don't have to always, like, you know, do what I mean? So when I get back to the beginning, I should have it done. Now, I see I did a mistake down here, right? Take a look here, folks. I went beyond, didn't pay attention to what I was doing. That's fine. I'm gonna do this takeaway. This is the remove selection. And I'm just going to go back in here. And I'm just going to go right in here in the water where I want it to be. And I'm just going to click, click, click way out here. Done. When I close it, I get the marching ants. I can come back in here later too and kind of say, oh, I need to get this little bit here. The computer thought this was part of the gray water. I think it's really part of the boat. So again, I just grab the selection mode. Up here, I can't afford to lose any more hair, so I'm going to get myself some hair to get my hair back. Get my hair back. Out here, I probably should get that yellow, the bright yellow of the edge. So I'm clicking quite a bit because I don't want it to go to the dark. It still goes down to that dark area. It's very strong. The computer's realizing the difference in the color quite a bit. We're going to be doing this two different ways. This is the first one, using the magnetic select tool. All right. All right, that looks like I got that pretty well. All right. Doing this right takes a little bit of time. We're good. So for example, this is still can be treated a little bit better. But if you've got a shape that's closed, that's going to be good enough for what we're doing today. So make sure you just close the shape out and we'll go forward. But again, if you're doing it for Jalissa, it's got to be nice. It's got to be really good. Or a client, right? It doesn't matter. Client, it's got to be good. Okay. All right, so I'm going to copy and paste it onto my background, which is that lake image that is in your folder. So I can do either, I think, edit copy, or I can do Control C, right? So Control C, and I've copied this selection. Let's go File, Open, and let's open up that Dells Lake. By the way, I have a text file showing you can read about Dells Lake. It's cool. It's a cool little place if you've not been out there to Wisconsin Dells. And then we'll do Control V for paste. And there it is. The boater has appeared. When you bring in an image, it tends to Photoshop puts it in the center, and you get to move it around. So I'm going to immediately put into the move, the move little tool here. But if you take a look, I'm going to scroll in a bit. Look what's going on here. Look at the fuzziness of the edge, right? That 4-pixel fuzz. Now, with the blue sky, it looks kind of weird, but I know I'm going to put this person down in the water, so it's going to be, something like that, maybe a little higher. It's going to blend pretty well with that background because it's just going to look pretty good. So it does it have to be a certain location? No, this is not an assignment you're turning in. This is an assignment to get you used to some of the tools that you can use on your assignments. That makes sense? So we're going to be talking about layering, and so I want to kind of share that. So that looks pretty good. So whenever you do this kind of stuff, just sit back and look at it. Does that look right? No. Well, okay, what's wrong? There's no reflection. Oh my goodness, I gotta get that reflection, right? So go back to our boater. It's still in select mode. I didn't change it out of it. So I have to do Control D to deselect. Control D, so I've deselected it. And this is all I've got. So this is the stuff I need to get in there. I've got to get that kind of reflection business going on in the file. So I can use just regular lasso tool. I don't need to use the magnetic right now. So I'm going to do like water. Right? I'm going to wiggle back and forth with my mouse. I'm just clicking and dragging now because I'm using the lasso tool. I'm thinking about water, wiggling, wiggle, 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 wiggle. I want to get those colors of those blades. That's kind of pretty obvious here. And when I get to the boat, I'm just going to click and drag just the bottom part. I use the bottom part to line it up with the image I have. Okay, I'll use the bottom part to line up with the image I have. All right, I think it looks good to me. So I'll do edit copy. So I clicked around, I wiggled around like water, wiggle, 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 wiggle. I'm looking to get the color of the blades on here because they're pretty prominent looking, and the color of the red here, that's pretty prominent looking. Okay, edit copy. So we go to the Dell's Lake, Control V, and there we go. Oop. Use to get the move, and we position it. Kind of put it where it needs to go. Okay. That looks pretty good there. I use my arrow keys a lot. You know, when I first get it roughly right, and then I kind of fine tune it using my arrow keys. That looks good. Notice what happened over here. We got the background. We got layer 1 and layer 2. It still is a little bit rough because it's such a different color. So for this layer 2, I'm going to bring down that opacity a little bit. Right? Just get it down there a little bit. And then also I'm going to use the eraser tool. So I brought the opacity down to like 60 or something like that. That looks looking pretty good. And then the eraser tool, here's the eraser tool right here. I brought it down to like 27% opacity. And I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger here. A little bit bigger. Make it bigger. I can make it bigger by clicking this button, making it bigger. I want the soft round brush. Brush over here. And I'm just gonna click. You see the water here? I'm just gonna click and drag it a little bit here. By clicking and dragging on these edges, I'm erasing 27% of that edge. And that gives me just enough of a blur at that edge, right? Look at that. That looks pretty good. I mean, and looking back on it, at least it doesn't stand out. I didn't say to myself, "Oh my gosh, that's totally wrong." I think possibly the perspective would be a little different, but that really depends on where the person is standing. If they're standing up or crouching down, taking this picture, what they're going to get visual-wise. But I think that, to me, one could think that that's true, that that's really happening there. I mean, there's enough of that lifelike look or whatever I would expect to see in real life that I think it works pretty well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this, the different modes here, the different blending modes. So if you click on the blending mode box here, you'll get the whole list of possible ways that one mode of one layer can be on top of another. So normal blending mode basically is what we saw. We put a boulder on top of the lake, and so it's a solid image on top of another image. One image hides what's below. Notice that there's all the colors are kind of visible here. Multiply, however, only takes the darker pixels and lays them on top. So you're seeing some of the pictures below in the wider portions of that boulder, right? So all this water image back there, you can kind of see through this boulder because only the dark pixels are being represented here, and the lighter ones kind of fade away. Here's screen blending. So that's one of the lighter ones that are there. And it's the opposite. So all the light pixels become more pronounced or more visible, and the darker pixels fade away. So that jacket just disappears practically, right? Same thing, hair, this bar, and only the light modes are kind of picked up. Now these modes are kind of grouped in similar things. So these would all make things darker, and these will make things lighter. And these are a mix of them, and there's some other stuff down here that are specific. But you can see the darker ones, how they all work. Blending mode can add texture. Perhaps it could be like a feel of a texture of a paper, or perhaps like the old-time photographs. So here's an example of just a bunch of little dots kind of laid out here. Maybe it's a picture of a piece of paper with some light thrown on it so we can get a feeling for it, and put it on top of the border and make it maybe a multiply mode or a darken. Make it a darken blending mode, and now all of a sudden we have a similar kind of dot pattern on top of the image. Here's a good example of using the different modes and how they sit together. So I started off with 3 different images. This is a rendering of sunlight coming in, no lights turned on. This is a rendering of the side lights turned on, no upper lights turned on. Here's a rendering only the upper lights, no side light, no outside light. And then they sat that on top of itself. And those here's the 3 layers right here. And by playing around with the opacity, playing around with whether it's a screen or a multiply, you can create 2 different pictures out of only 3 different. In other words, I can make multiple pictures here, layering up and making the opacity and making the type of blending mode happen on an image. Something to think about. That saves you from making separate renderings. Also, you can use some of these with the opacity, make it look like almost like a dimmer switch, right? So when you do layering, you have to be careful, right? You have to be careful, right? Let's look at that one. You have to be careful of your blending mode. At first glance, you think, we got the family sitting around this pool. And the answer is, I don't know. What's going on here? Well, first of all, I think this kid and this kid are the exact same kid. What they do is they took a picture of him this way, took a picture of him this way, took a bunch of pictures, stock pictures, and they just put them in here. And this is color change. Look, this is curling this way, this is curling that way. It's color change. That's all they did for the pants. And this person here, she's not even there. Look at that. She must have been cut out from something else. Look at that arm, that leg being cut off. What's going on there? And on top of that, what's her hand doing? You know, what in heaven's name is going on in this place? They just composited this all together. And when you do that, you really have to be careful about what layers on top, what layers on the bottom, and so forth. You can see here an example. Here she is here, the same person. What? But she had a pink because, of course, it's a girl. It's a girl face, so it's got to be pink, right? I'm sure this is the same girl here, too. And I bet you she's not in the water either. There's no water there at all. And this is where basically it came from. Later on, look at that. Later on, they said that they were able to see the corrected, I guess, version of it in the end. They put her back in the back. It's basically her layer was on the wrong spot. That's all it was. But it's just interesting how that came out to be, and if you're not careful. By the way, this is the link down here if you really want to see where I got it from. And we see this all the time. We see this all the time. Like if you go looking for, like this is a wallpaper company from Pottery Barn. Well, they're basically, separated this element, and then this is behind, right? They just changed the wallpaper behind. They're compositing the pieces there and laying them out and just changing the background. And so we have the same front. This really isn't here. This wallpaper and this are not really here. Just make sure the wallpaper is the right scale so people understood what they were getting. All right, we can save this as a PSD file, Photoshop file. And when we do the next lecture, we'll see a different technique using masking to create a similar effect. One's not better than the other. It just depends what you've got to start with